Um, so the first theme I want to talk about a bit is the idea of becoming self-aware, and I want to talk about it in two ways. One to kind of make an investment, a developmental, deep investment in one's self-awareness, and then complementary to that, to have some kind of a tool to keep oneself updated every day on how one is doing. And I think by now there's almost no argument about the value of self-awareness to enterprises. There's a lot of research that has really validated this idea. Probably this whole wave was cresting with the idea of emotional intelligence that Daniel Goleman popularized some of the academic research about that. This is about a decade or maybe even 15 years ago. And I think by now, both anecdotally but also on the research side, we sort of appreciate that people tend to perform better who have some deep sense of who they are. In the book, I talk about self-awareness as including things like a sense of one's own strengths and weaknesses, a sense of one's values, what do you stand for, some sense of, people use a word like vision. To me, that's a very fancy, opaque word that means all kinds of things. But more prosaically, where are we trying to go? Where are you trying to go in your life? Where are we trying to go as an organization? Where should human beings be trying to go? And people who are healthy, have thought about all those things and, tend to lead a relatively peaceful, harmonious life if somehow those things fit together. In other words, my sense of what my life is about kind of matches up well with what my organization cares about, and that in turn matches up well with my beliefs about human beings and how they ought to operate. So let me just talk briefly about the self-awareness in Jesuit terms and then kind of transition a bit into our daily lives. Some of the viewers would know that every Jesuit in training goes through an intense month-long period of introspection that's called the spiritual exercises. These are a systematic series of meditations that St. Ignatius developed. For him, they were aimed toward helping people make a choice of vocation in life. Often people would be considering a religious vocation. But really, they're more a systematic approach to helping people develop a degree of self-awareness. I mean, people end up having to reflect on all of these questions I introduced earlier. What am I good at and bad at, and what do I think life is about, and what's worth the investment of a human lifetime, and so on. People who manage a lot of people or work in human resources departments, I did both in the time that I was at Morgan, are often surprised by this phenomenon of rising corporate stars who blow up. In other words, sometimes you hire people who are very, very smart. They do very well when you ask them to do relatively straightforward things like managing Excel spreadsheets. But then they have difficulty when they get tossed into, well, reality. Reality is very ambiguous. In a math class, there's probably one exact answer that's correct. In business and in life, most problems do not have one clear, exactly correct answer. And so you need people who have a level of judgment to be able to look at various alternatives and make a choice, a level of courage to be able to go ahead and take personal risk and do things. And also a kind of a sense of a compass, to be able to, an ethical compass, to be able to judge, well, I mean, this kind of pathway may be expedient for us, but it doesn't really feel consistent with how we ought to operate as human beings or as an organization. And, there's a school of thought that attributes the acquisition of these kinds of skills, to have good judgment, to be able to operate in ambiguity, to have a compass. All of these things often come from some investment in self-awareness, and how people do that varies tremendously. Often we see people like St. Ignatius himself who go through intense personal difficulties or crises. You get fired, you're bankrupt, you're an alcoholic, your marriage breaks up, whatever it may be. And this kind of experience, of course, for some people is deeply crushing and they never recover. But for other people, it sort of helps them to clarify in a crucible-like fashion what they want their life to be about and what they think life ought to be about. It's a self-awareness building exercise, going through these sort of searing experiences. Remember, Farewell to Arms, Hemingway says, the world breaks everyone, but after many are strong in the broken places. This kind of human phenomenon. And I guess what I'm proposing in the book that is, if life thrusts a crisis on us, these are kind of tragedies we don't look for, but maybe we ought to use them to reap whatever benefit we can in terms of self-understanding and growth. Or alternatively, if life doesn't thrust on us through a crisis, some moment of self-scrutiny, we all need to create for ourselves some kind of mechanism, process as adults to come to grips with who we are and what we're good at and what we want our lives to be about. And Jesuits achieve this through their spiritual exercises, and every great religious and spiritual tradition has tools for helping people come to grips with a deep sense of self. But also every great humanistic tradition has other ways to help people come to grips with self. And even in the corporate world, we often use things like Myers-Briggs and 360-degree feedback and other sorts of tools that can help people begin to go on that sort of a journey. I said that I also wanted to introduce a tool for daily updating in addition to making this kind of profound upfront investment, and let me talk about that just very briefly before I finish. St. Ignatius teaches recruits and would advise us every day to make 2 or 3 little mental pit stops. And for example, you might have 5 minutes after lunch, a few minutes on the commute home from work, and as a first step, remind yourself why you're grateful as a human person, why you're grateful today. And secondly, maybe try to think about some personal objective you need to be working on these days, or perhaps some issue that needs to be addressed, or some goal you were working toward. And then third, mentally go back through the last few hours, scroll through whatever meetings or situations you were in, and try to take away just some little lesson that might help you in the next few hours. If you perform badly in a sales meeting, well, why was that? What tactically or what inside you was going on that might have interfered with you performing the way you would have wanted to perform. And I think the genius of this very simple practice, becomes obvious when we think about the lifestyles we're trying to lead nowadays. We're kind of bobbing along here on this tide of email and meeting and phone call and distraction, and you never get to your number one priority by the end of the day, or you have a meeting go badly at 8:30 in the morning, and the whole rest of the day, you're thinking, oh gee, I wish I said this at 8:30, and so we remain totally distracted, and we're present in the past, but not really in the only moment that we have to operate in, which is right now. So this first theme that I want to explore in the book was this idea of self-awareness and how Jesuits acquired it, and maybe to mine that a bit and try to extract some thoughts that might help the rest of us in our various situations to become more self-aware people.